want to share an incredible story that I just heard from Rabbi Elimelech Biederman. There was a family, a husband and wife, who had recently gotten married. And several months later, within the year, they had a beautiful baby boy. They gave the boy a bris. And following the bris, 30 days later, they made a pidyon haben, a tremendous celebration in the family. 5 months later, something strange happened. The baby began to give off a terrible, terrible odor. A stench that was beyond. It smelled like a corpse. That's how bad it was. And the doctors didn't know what it was. They could not identify the issue, the problem of why the baby was emitting a stench of a corpse. And many doctors examined the baby and found nothing wrong except the odor. The grandfather of the baby says, listen, we have no choice. We went to the doctors. Now we have to see Das Torah. We have to go to a great gadol, ask him for a bracha, ask him for advice. My Rebbe, the grandfather says, is Rav Shmuel Vosner. Zatzal, he was nifter a couple of years ago. He lives in Eretz Yisrael. Let's go to Rav Vosner and ask him for advice and a bracha. They book a ticket immediately. They leave from Kennedy Airport. They land in Ben Gurion Airport. They take a taxi straight to Rav Vosner's home. Rav Vosner invites the father and grandfather into his house courteously and happily and warmly. He sits them down and he says, so Nu, why did you come all the way from America, from New York, to visit me here in Eretz Yisrael? The grandfather says, Rebbe, my son gave birth to his own son, my grandson, and he has a terrible, terrible smell. The smell is so bad, it smells like a corpse. And we can't identify it. We went to many great doctors, and nobody knows why. We came here to the Rebbe for advice and a bracha. The Rebbe says, let me ask you, what's the baby's name? They said the name of the baby. Shmuel Vosner looks at the farm and says, who's that name after? The grandfather says, after my father. Shmuel Vosner says, what? You gave the baby the name of your father? Isn't it the custom that the mother's family gives the first name? Why didn't you fill the custom, the minhag, that the mother's family gets to choose the first name? Why is it after you? Grandfather says, because we don't get along with the mother's father, the mechutin. He's a very difficult person. We keep a distance from him. The father says, I couldn't even call him to even ask him and engage him in a conversation regarding the name of the baby. So we chose the name on our own, and we didn't involve him. The Rebbe says, so Nu, now you understand the smell? Machloikis! Call your father-in-law right now and ask him for mechila. Tell him you're sorry. And ask him for a name. And you take that name and you add it to your son's name. Do it now. Father says, I can't. Can't do it. He's so difficult to get along with. I can't call him. Rav Vosner says, you came all the way from New York to Eretz Yisrael to ask me for advice. And you're telling me you can't listen? Father thought, he says, you know something, Rebbe, you're right. I'll call. Good, go next door into my office and call right now. The father called his father-in-law. He asked him for mechila. He asked him for a name. They left Rav Vosner's house straight back to Ben Gurion Airport. Landed in New York. His wife picked him up and says, the baby hasn't smelled in 9 hours. The odor went away. Yes, machlokes. But when we're caught in machlokes, for whatever the reason is, we can't get out of it. Make shalom.